And we're live. Hi, welcome. My name is Shira Goldberg, for those of you that don't know that. And I am the host of The Addiction Show. Today's topic is very near and dear to my heart. It's something I think everyone in the helping professions should be not only aware of, but really proficient at. So I picked up, when it first came out, I believe in 2013, the third edition of Motivational Interviewing. Its originators are Bill Miller, he's based out of New Mexico, and Stephen Rolnick, I believe he's in the Netherlands. Um, they have, over the past about 4 decades, refined and done a lot of research on this. So it's an evidence-based intervention, and it's really been beneficial in a variety of areas, which our wonderful guests will share with us what those are. I have with me someone who was personally recommended by Bill Miller, and now I know her, so I feel very special. Her name is Dee-Dee Stout. You can find her at deedeestoutconsulting.com. So for those of you that are interested in learning about motivational interviewing, she's actually a trainer. She's a highly esteemed and acclaimed motivational interviewing trainer. She's in the International Motivational Interviewing network of trainers known as MINT. And it's such an honor and a true pleasure to have her on the show. So, Dee-Dee, thank you so much for being here. Welcome.
Oh, thanks very much, Shira, and that was a lovely introduction.
Thank you.
Now I'm truly nervous. I've got to live up to all that.
You know what? I practiced that introduction so I wouldn't screw it up. So don't be nervous.
Well, like I said, I didn't practice anything, so I'll screw this up a lot. In trainings, the one thing that I've learned we figure I've done something like over 700 trainings at this point, over 15 years, and it's like a wedding. When you prepare for a wedding, you need to prepare that something's going to go wrong. And if you just go in with that mindset and know something's going to go wrong, then you can breathe and be fine. It's when you expect perfection that you have trouble.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? It's the same thing working with clients.
Mm-hmm.
That if you can relax and just roll with whatever goes on, then you can actually model that idea of motivational interviewing, a little of that rolling with resistance, as we used to talk about.
Well, if you've seen any of my shows, I roll all the time. I'm rocking and I'm rolling.
You're a big girl, huh? Rolling all over the place. Yep. That's great. So you're right. I mean, MI is very much at my heart too, and really allowed me, when I got trained in 2000 with Bill and his peers at the University of New Mexico, to come back into this work. At that point, I had left the field. At least I had left working clinically in the field. I was completely burned out. I was under the care of a psychiatrist who took me out of work, literally. I'd never experienced such a thing. And he told me his concern was that the work that I was doing was now killing me. And we talked about this, and I'll never forget thinking, and I think saying out loud to him, isn't it ironic that the very thing that gave me my new life is now killing me? What am I supposed to do with that? So
Right.
talk about cognitive dissonance, And he said, I don't know, but you can't keep doing this. And the point was, it was the way in which I was working. It wasn't the work per se, but this was a long time ago. This was in the 90s, obviously, if I got trained in 2000. And I had already been working in the field for a decade or so, maybe a little bit longer. And we did a lot of fighting with people. We did a lot of that. You've got to break through denial.
Right.
Instead of appreciating denial as a coping mechanism and as something that we're actually encouraging people to have. Because if you look at the other side, it could be called boundaries, right? I'm telling you what I'm comfortable talking about and what I'm not comfortable talking about, at least right now, that kind of thing. So when I left the training, I remember telling Bill, thank you for giving me my professional life back. This is the way. I can go back and I can work with people. I'm not going to argue with them anymore. I'm not going to fight with people. And I shouldn't be. It's their life. They can do, and they do, as we all know, anything that they want to. And it's not my job to fix people. It's not my job to talk them into something. So one of my favorite expressions about motivational interview, and my favorite definition, if you will, is MI is love with a goal. It's that simple in some ways. Love with a goal.
Mm-hmm.
So you have to love people first and truly love them. Doesn't mean you have to agree with their behavior. Doesn't mean you have to, like what they're doing. It does mean that you need to find a way to appreciate it, though, to see it as a coping mechanism that's gone awry, to see it as a way to medicate the pain that they're in, to see it as a way of maybe fitting in with a group of people that they don't feel confident, that they have a lot of anxiety about, that they can't fit into, whatever their reasons for using are, and understand that as well as you can. And then understand their circumstances, their values, how they might want to make a change, why they would want to do it, how they could do it if they were going to be successful, those kinds of things.
Yeah, I'm really glad you're starting to talk about motivational interviewing in this context, because I do talk to a lot of people that are interested in being in the helping professions, and they use a lot of labels like or they will say about themselves, well, I'm in recovery, but my husband is a normie, and I really find that to be kind of just against the grain of what recovery means to me. And you have a lot of experience. You are an advanced licensed addiction and other drug counselor, so I'm sure you've come across this. But I was taught when you know better, you do better. So at the time when most people are at their in the midst of their addiction, they are using whatever coping mechanisms that they know. So to me, that is the most normal, if you want to, use that word,
right.
That is the most normal thing to do. If it's denial, if, whatever it is, if it's cognitive dissonance, it's you use what you know. And
right.
then
it works.
Yeah. So
at least
that's why
exactly.
So that's why I don't understand why people, feel like they have to identify in a negative context.
Yeah, that's a really good point, and it comes up all the time in our field, because if you look at this, it's supposed to be a medical condition. That's what we keep getting told, and many of us look at it that way. And we'll use the word addiction just for lack of a better word, right? And if it's a medical condition, why is it the only medical condition that we don't treat medically?
Right.
I mean, it's crazy, if you will. So, we have all of these negative connotations around it. Well, we don't do that when people get cancer or when people have diabetes or some other sort of condition for which behavior almost always plays some role in it. My father didn't get in trouble when he had his triple bypass a few years ago. Nobody shook his finger at him and said, well, until you stop eating butter and steaks, we're not going to do that surgery. So come back when you're really serious.
Yeah.
We want you to go to support groups forever.
Right.
That is not how he was treated at all. He was treated with medication. He was given lots of options. He was treated like an intelligent person. He was, again, given those options. His wife was brought in to discuss what some dietary changes might look like, but ultimately she wasn't going to become his keeper either. God bless her. I thought that was very healthy of her. And it's really interesting how we don't do that. So with addiction often comes all of these labels that are negative and misunderstood. So even when we use the term recovery, when someone comes to see me, and they'll often say that they want recovery or they're in recovery, and my next question is always, tell me what you mean by that. You know, give me a little background, because that can mean so many different things.
Yeah, there's no universal definition to recovery. So it's such a prime example of how it's an individualized experience.
Right, and that comes back to MI, because that's what we're always doing. That's what makes MI so difficult to train, and what I love about it so much, and many of us do at the same time. So people like to say, well, can you train me? I want my staff trained in MI to work with people with schizophrenia. Okay, you know, it's not going to be much different than I'm going to train people to use MI to work with people with diabetes, or with heart conditions, or with addictions, or, you know, lots of other ways. There might be a greater focus in some ways than others, but MI itself is MI. And what sometimes that will mean, what people really want, is, for instance, I had a group ask me to train their staff, this was many years ago, come and train my staff in MI, working with people with schizophrenia, because we want them to keep taking their medications. And I had to say, you know, I can't do that. I can't train your staff to coerce better, you know, getting your patients to take medicine. Right now, what I can do is train your staff so that they can have conversations with people, and those conversations might you know, be more motivating to help people to stay on their medications. Sure, absolutely, but there's no guarantee here. Ultimately, that needs to be a patient's decision. I realize it makes it easier on the unit if everybody is sort of compliant. But, you know, do we really want just a group of compliant people, or do we want individuals? I think we want individuals. At least I think so.
Yeah, I think so too. That's what I prefer.
Yeah.
So motivational interviewing is really for those that are interested in even maybe doing training with you. It's about helping people to facilitate change. We're working with people. There's no coercion. We're not the boss. We're not the expert in this relationship. We are kind of opening the doors by maybe presenting options in a different way, or options that you might not have thought about before, seeing what stages they're in. And so it's just really, it's about a conversation and how you're talking with someone.
Very good. You've done your homework, Shira.
Yay, I told you I love motivational interviewing.
I like to describe MI as a giant heart. You know, there's the love, and I'm just across the bay in San Francisco, so, you know, that fits. And so in this heart, think of it as two sides of this heart. And on one side, we have the spirit of motivational interviewing. And the spirit of MI is where we always begin when we train with folks and when we talk about MI. And that's kind of how you're coming to people. You know, are you coming thinking that these are people that are competent, that made a great decision to come in to see you, or to get some treatment, or, you know, whatever it is to make a change in their life? Is it somebody who is that you believe in their right to autonomy? Are you going to be able to support that idea, even if it's a mistake? You know, and I put that in quotes because I don't really know if your action is going to be a mistake for you or not. I might know what it would be for me, but I can't know for you. And it's also about working together. So are you willing to be collaborative and not be the expert in this person's life? You can be an expert in other things, but not in that person's life or their change. And then, am I able to have a kind of conversation where I'm drawing out of you your ideas, how you want to make a change, what change you might be interested in making, and how you're going to do that to be successful. Lastly, Bill, this last, well, it's been 2 years now, 2015, in MI3 added compassion to that mix. So we have 4 ingredients for spirit now. And compassion meaning that, in fact, I looked it up. So there you go. And it was about a deep sorrow and sympathy with strong desire to alleviate suffering. And that's very close to the Buddhist definition that I tend to use, which is kind of rubbing up against suffering, being willing to rub up against suffering. And that's actually different than compassion, which has more of that experiencing of somebody else's thoughts or feelings, so really two different things. And compassion is really at its core. And so if you can bring that, and you have that as your base, you can put anything with MI Spirit. You can do cognitive behavioral therapy of some kind. Perhaps you're a psychodynamic person, and you can do that. Perhaps you're a medical doctor, and you're working in healthcare. You can do that. Perhaps you're doing something, I don't know, I've had life coaches, I've had ministers, I've spoken to the National Organizers Association. And we've all had these really wonderful places where we've spoken, many of us in Mint and all over the world, to see where MI can be used in some unusual places. On the other side, we've got Spirit, are what I call the skills and strategies of MI. And that's where your intuition, where your expertise, where your education is going to come into play. We have some things that are specific to MI, but then you're going to need to decide when and how you would use those tools and strategies, those skills and strategies of that side. And you put those together and you have MI. So one of the things we like to talk about is this idea, can you use the skills and strategies and not have Spirit? And we like to say, yes, you can, but then you're still not doing MI. Right? You have to have the Spirit. You really have to believe in people's abilities. And that's what was missing in my world before I found MI. I was kind of trained in that, how do you know an addict is lying? Their lips are moving.
Right.
That was the joke we used to make. I mean, what a horrible thing to say about another human.
Especially a whole group of people.
Right, right. And we would decide who was an addict and who wasn't. Right? So you also didn't get to do that. We decided. And if you were in treatment, therefore you were. Right? And we know today that's not necessarily true either. But those, that was the 80s. So we did the best we could with the knowledge we had then. And now we know better.
Yeah, and so we know better, so we do better. And that is really why motivational interviewing, it kind of reminds me in a way of smart recovery, because their slogan is, as science evolves, so do we, or something like that. And I really connect with that. So what I learned today is a continuation on a spectrum of growth and education and experience, and so that just makes more sense to me. So that's why there's been some restructuring in the third edition of Motivational Interviewing book, because as research and science evolve, then we use the practices that have been proven through research and they're evidence-based, that they make sense.
Right. And that's sort of always the thing. Steve Rolnick, the other author, likes to say, we don't know why this works. Maybe it's not even what we think it is. We could be full of shit. He's great. And he says, we don't know exactly why it's working. We're getting closer to knowing more, absolutely, to know more about change. And that's really what we look at. How people change, when they change, how they talk when they change, those kinds of things. And when they don't, the other side of that as well. So we're all about change. It's just that we're not defining the change for somebody.
Exactly.
As I said, it's like being in the Boy Scouts, of the idea of getting out of the woods, that it's, in scouting, my son was a scout too. An eagle, I should say. And the idea in scouting is not that somebody else helps you to find your way out of the woods, or that they help you get out of the woods. They're helping you find your own way.
Exactly.
Right? Because they want you to have the skills. So the next time you go into the woods, you're probably better able to do it all on your own. And that's kind of the idea with MI. So I'm here to having this conversation with you about a change you want to make. And I'm going to hopefully draw out from you some ideas, what you've tried, what's worked, what hasn't worked, and reflect those things back to you in different ways. Ask for your permission if I could throw in a couple of ideas that I might have while you're talking, see what you think of them. You can dismiss them, it's fine. One of them you might like, and then go out and try it. And say, come back and let me know. How does that work for you? How is it feeling? Was that doable, or was it a complete disaster? Okay, well, we're going to write that one off. That didn't work. And look at the reasons it didn't work if you can. And if not, pick yourself up, brush yourself off, and go, okay, let's try again. Now what do you want to do? Instead of getting caught in all of what Alan Marlatt used to call the abstinence violation effect. That idea if I have one chocolate out of the box, I might as well eat the whole thing. Right? I call it the short version of the Serenity Prayer. So fuck it, right? So I might as well eat the whole thing, right? Instead of saying, oh gosh, I really wish I hadn't had that chocolate. Okay, I can put it away now. Let me put it in the freezer, and that way I won't eat it. Or let me throw it out. I'll take it out to the trash right now, or give it to my neighbor or something. Right? And that's part of our thinking, that schema that we seem to have, that we in MI would like to shift a little bit and just suggest that perhaps we don't need to hold on to those kinds of ideas, that they're not useful. So it is a little bit of CBT in there, that cognitive behavioral approach that smart recovery comes from.
Right.
Bill is a behaviorist at heart. That's where he came from.
Yeah. I am too.
Yeah, you can see.
But I really see how motivational interviewing it's so integrative, because throughout the book, the third edition, they both talk a lot about Carl Rogers and compassion and congruence, and I think a lot of us that are successful in working with people have already in a lot of ways been doing motivational interviewing. They just didn't realize what it was. Right.
You weren't necessarily doing it purposefully.
Right.
Or in a particular order. Right. But yes, and so that's when I really have fun. When I get to help people to see that they have already been doing a lot of these pieces, and so now help them to just merely become more mindful. Why are you asking this question? Let's look at, is there another way to get there without asking a question? Can we do it in a different way? Can we give some sort of suggestions without giving advice? How do we do that in a more congruent way with our person-centered counseling here? Absolutely. So these little tiny tweaks, if you will, always remembering that I'm not sure what I'm going to do next until you say something to what I've just said. And that's the tricky part in training. So there's no manual for training MI. Bill wrote a manual one time, and it's quite a funny story, because the therapists were all very well trained in MI. I believe that they were at the university in New Mexico. And it was a disaster. And he went in and looked, and it was because they did exactly what the next page in the manual told them to do. And that probably worked with one person out of 10, but the other people, that wasn't logical. But they had to do it because that was the manual. So they did their job. And he said, oh my God, it was a disaster. So that's why there's no manual of how to use MI. There's also, while I'm at it, there's no theory of motivational interviewing. So we're going with that science, with that, that's why there's going to be another edition, I would imagine, in 4 years, although we make the joke, 10 years, sorry, that when we get to MI5, Steve, because he lives in Wales, he's actually South African, but lives in Wales now, he likes to joke with MI5 there, that's like the CIA here in the United States, and so it's a different name. But they look at the research and say, okay, what has it taught us now? What's the next thing we know? Which makes it exciting. It's this living, breathing thing that I believe is more an art form than it is science in the stricter sense of that.
Yeah, I agree. I used to get a little, my feathers ruffled when people would say, "Oh, it's more of an art than a science what you do or what you're studying." But now that I really understand it, it really is. And that's another point that Bill made in the book. It's not a technical, step-by-step procedural type of thing. Because if we could master this in a technical sense, we would be technicians, and that's not the goal.
Exactly. Exactly. Very good. And that we're not doing surgery.
Right.
We aren't. We're not dissecting this person that's sitting across from us. I've often told my students when I used to train counselors in addiction certification programs, and they would want to go digging around in people's pasts and all of the stuff. And I understand that the stories can be very intriguing and very juicy, and there's a time and a place for that. But not when you're a certified addictions counselor. That's beyond your scope to begin with. And second of all, I said we're not archaeologists. That's hold on here. Let's do something in today. Let's help people to look at today, because yesterday is probably too complicated and too traumatic for many people that we work with to look at least in the beginning. So, that's the invitation. How would you like to make a change? First, would you like to make a change? And if you're not ready to make the change that other people think you should make, Steve loves to ask this question because people would always get stumped, right, and say, but I work with people and they don't want to make a change, and he said, then ask them what they would be willing to do. If they're not willing to go abstinence completely right this moment, if that's too scary or they don't have the support for it, then I often ask them, so what do you think you could do? What would get you on that path that would be reasonable for you to get success, because I want you to be successful, and that you could feel like you're doing something positive toward that direction. And so that's what we would do, and that's what I continue to do with them.
And I think that really is important to point out, because a lot of us have heard about black and white thinking, and if it's all or nothing, then you're going to end up catastrophizing and magnifying, and it really shoots you like a rocket in the wrong direction, and it makes the external locus of control unreachable, because it becomes so overwhelming so quickly. And I love the engagement with MI. So you have options. It's your life. These are your choices. So people, it's like brick by brick, they start building themselves back up. Then they're able to take ownership of how far they've come or in the process of becoming, because these are their choices, and you're working to pull these choices and opportunities and options out of them and create something that they didn't realize that they were already in possession of.
Right. I was recently training with a group, and someone made a comment about how I think it was around how they had helped somebody to do something, and the person was therefore successful. And I said, okay, that's terrific. And if they aren't successful, however you're defining that, I'm going to assume that you're going to take responsibility for that too.
Yep.
And he looked at me and said, well, no. And I said, well, I'm sorry, but we can't have it both ways. So you've either got to take responsibility for both, successes or failures, or there's another option, and that's called the MI way, step out of the way completely and let people get their own empowerment to make their own decisions, whether they're the best decisions or not. We all need to make mistakes. That's really how we grow and how we learn, is from the mistakes. Don't we all remember the classes that we did more poorly in over the years than we do the ones we did great in, ironically.
Yeah, that's true for me. If I get one wrong on an exam, that's the only one I'll remember, that carries over.
You know, you brought up something, Shira. You mentioned engaging, and that's one of the ways that we look at MI now in this MI3, as you know, is the first stage, what we call the first process of MI. And we talk about 4 processes in MI these days, with the first one being engaging. And that's something that we need to do with folks all the time. You can't stop engaging, right? And after we do this engagement, we help people to focus in on something because we want to go somewhere. We don't want to just have nice conversations. We want it to be, we want to be a guide. We want to help them find their road, lay those bricks, if you will, and move in a positive direction toward whatever ultimate goal they have. The third thing that we talk about these days is that evoking, that piece that we believe is really unique and special about motivational interviewing, that we are drawing out from another person their ideas, their goals, their dreams, whatever it is, instead of us feeding it to them, which in the old days, you know, it was a top-down approach, right? I'm the expert, I'm going to tell you how to do this. And then lastly, this idea of planning, which if the first 3 stages kind of work, you know, if those are sufficiently laid well in these processes, then the planning will probably come. But that is really less important to us than the other 3 stages. Or processes. I keep calling it stages, and it's technically processes. See, there's my big mistake for the day.
Got it out of the way. Check.
Finally. Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah, well, there's no other theory or application or intervention that is aligned with the spirit of doing something. And I think that's what really, like, when I first learned about it, I was like, wow, that instantly, like, conjured up images of what I really thought is, in my naivete when I wanted to be a therapist, is I want to help people, and I have compassion, and I understand, and I want to work with people, and let's learn together type of approach. So I think that's why MI really resonated with me, because it was in alignment with how I did things already. So
right.
it was learning on top of what already existed within me.
Right.
And my personality is compassionate, and I want to work with people. I talk with people, not at people. So it was really, it was really easy for me to get it, you know, in my limited capacity. But I think that's why it really is so relatable to so many different situations, because most of us who are interested in helping someone want to be effective in doing so.
Right, right. Or we're not going to be in business for very long. That's going to be a little rough.
Yeah.
But, you know, I don't want people to think that they have to come to MI in that way, because I did not. You know, that was not my training. I'd like to think it was in me, you know, down there somewhere. It's certainly not my training. And so, you know, it took me a number of years before I felt like I had, you know, a little bit of competency when it came to using MI and kind of being in this other way with folks. And then I found that, you know, it's just so delicious because it's so freeing for us. I don't have to have the answers.
It takes so much pressure off.
Exactly. My job is to be a pathological listener. You know? I used to be a pathological liar, so, you know, the other side of that. Okay, I can do that. Right? And I love that idea. You know, that I can do. And actually, that's harder than it sounds, as I know you know and many other people will appreciate.
Yeah, someone just told me stop talking so much, so I think I'm still on the learning curve with the active listening.
Well, we can all be there. Trust me. Yeah, absolutely.
So tell us a little more about your consulting and in what capacity. And I know you work with different agencies that are interested in learning more about motivational interviewing. So, and you also do training workshops.
Mm-hmm. I do training workshops in a variety of different ways and settings, whether it's ones that are open to the public. I try to have those annually. Didn't work out last year on just my schedule, but this year there'll be one for people that already have some basic knowledge of motivational interviewing and want to know how to apply it in group setting. So that'll be in July, and that should be up on the website in the next, give me a month. We're doing some renovation to the site. So there's some information up there that's incorrect right now, and so I'll apologize for that. But shoot me an email, Dee-Dee Stout Consulting @gmail. It's really simple. The other things that I do, I'm also on faculty at Cal State University Monterey Bay, where I teach a course in a really interesting department. It's a combination department of health and human services and public policy. So it looks at how public policy shapes what we do with people around drugs and drug use, and society's ideas around what we should be doing, and then how it influences back again to public policy. So that's a fascinating class for undergrads down there, and I really have a good time. MI has made me a much better instructor as well, a professor, because I'm able to let people make mistakes. I'm able to listen to other ideas better, all sorts of things, I think, as a result of that. And what else do I do? And I do some coaching, motivational interviewing as well. So when people have trainings with me, I always give them some free coaching for at least a couple of folks. And I'm beyond that, it's whatever that might be useful for them. So sometimes it's about setting up their own kind of MI support group of their own clinicians that want to get together and practice skills, and so I'll help them to do that. I do coding. I have a couple of places that I'm working with right now, listening to their tapes. I need to do that this weekend and listen to some tapes. So there's a few different things that I've got my fingers in. And then, of course, I have a private practice.
You are one busy lady, I'll tell you that. Yeah. I really appreciate you taking time out of your crazy schedule.
My delight.
Yeah, to just talk with us and to share your expertise in motivational interviewing. But I think just presenting it the way we have is really it's approachable. It's not something you have to be afraid of or distance yourself from, because I think most of us are really already doing a large part of it. It's just you can really understand how to some extent how it works together, and in what aspects work with it, like CBT, and having a therapeutic alliance. I mean, these are things that we all really are familiar with, and it's such a wonderful way to really engage with someone. And it's funny when I call you an expert, because you are an expert, but it's kind of tongue in cheek, because we're talking about not being being perceived as an expert when you're working with someone, but then I introduce you, am I expert? But you are an expert.
I can be an expert in motivational interviewing. I'm just not an expert in your life.
Absolutely.
Right?
So there's the distinction.
Exactly. And that's the deal. That's why I need you. Right?
Yeah.
I need you to participate, and so I need to make the room safe enough for you to feel like you can fully participate in this process, and that alone may take some time.
But yeah, and this is the one last point I wanted to touch on with MI, because I am such a big fan, is these are skills just by the way you interact with someone, if they're a client or however you are working with someone, they start to realize, even at an unconscious level, of the pattern of how they have options and how they can empower themselves. So when they're going through something, a mild or moderate crisis, they don't have to panic and freak out and try to call someone and they're at a complete loss. I don't know what to do because I can't reach this person. It's you learn how to, constantly you're validating the information that you already have, because you can, and you see that in real world application, because
Right.
you can make your own decisions. So it's a really
Right.
good training ground for just really appreciating and valuing what you already have, and how you can offer yourself things that you just needed to, have someone talk with you and point that out.
Right. Absolutely. Yeah. If you want somebody to tell you how to run your life, MI is not, don't look for an MI practitioner. We're not going to do it.
Yeah, that's what I should write down, like top 10 questions I get, and one of them is, what do I do?
Yeah, and we say back to people, what do you think? What do
what do you think you should do?
What do you think would be useful right now? Yeah, we can, and it doesn't mean, again, that we don't ever have any advice, because we can, but I do want to make sure that it's the last thing that I give you, not the first thing, and that I do it with permission, with respect to you. Because so often I think I know I tried to be the best clinician in the world and never felt I was good enough, so constantly reading and going to other workshops and always trying to find the right thing for a person. Mm-hmm. Well,
that sounds like me.
Yeah, and it was great in one way. I got a lot of education. I got certified in a bunch of different things, and I've got all this wealth of information now. So it's useful as tools. However, it still isn't the answer, right? Because there is no the answer. It's in you. What your answer is. That I can help you find. I hope. That's our goal, at least, is to help you find your answer or answers for life that will be a life that you want, in your way of looking at culture and of things that are important and your values and the goals you want in life, and fits in with you. So it's going to be a very unique plan, likely. And that's what I love about it. So every day that I work with somebody, I get to hear their stories. And isn't that why we became helpers? To hear stories.
Yeah, that's why I like to joke around. I say, well, that's why we're referred to as helpers, not I'm telling you what to doers.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I like to say that we're not plumbers. Yeah, we don't fix it. Yeah. And people aren't pipes, and they're not broken. So, they're fine.
I love that. I want to sign off with that.
Yeah.
People are not broken, and it's true. We all need some one to talk things about and through, and it's really all up to us, and we all have the power. So it's kind of like, I guess, Empire Strikes Back.
That's right. The force is in you.
Yeah, the force is in you. So Dee-Dee Stout, you can find her Dee-Dee Stout Consulting.com. You can see it right under
Consulting
the banner. It's all there. And you can also reach her easy Gmail, which I love, Dee-Dee Stout Consulting at gmail.com. So So if you're interested in connecting with her, keeping tabs on her workshops, her trainings, and her just ongoings in general, check out her soon to be updated website and keep in touch with her. So
I'd love to hear from anybody. That would be great.
And
especially thanks to you. Thanks, Shira.
Yay, thanks, Shira. Round of applause. All right, so check Dee-Dee out, DeeDeeStoutConsulting.com. Until next time, bye.
Bye.